Acquired brain injury is like an iceberg, you know, we can see things on the outside, but underneath the water, there are certain factors. And one of the things I want to talk about now is the whole area of chronic fatigue and motivation. And chronic fatigue is a significant feature of acquired brain injury, and fatigue management is something that needs to be planned for the care and planned for the individual with the ABI, the acquired brain injury. So how do we manage that? How do we manage that? Because what we know is if a person gets over fatigued, quite often then frustration, intolerance, low mood, agitation, anger can all be a feature. And then if a person is getting, fundamentally the brain needs sleep. Sleep is part of the restoration and healing. Sleep equals healing. But structuring that sleep and that fatigue management can be critical. So for example, a person might get up in the morning, might be up an hour or two and might go back, and if they were left, they could sleep for 4 hours, and then get up and could be quite agitated towards the very end of the day before they go to bed. And I think you can measure this. This is the value of measuring it, talking with your RAs, and just trying to figure out the best mechanism for fatigue management. And so it could be that maybe an hour and a half, which is a good sleep cycle with your REM and non-REM sleep, and then the person wakes up and they'll get another hour and a half later on in the day. It might mean that the evening part has less of the negative side effects of the chronic fatigue, and that less side effects acts positively for the carer because there's less agitation, frustration, etc. So if you want to figure this out, start trying to understand. You'll have a good sense of that, because nobody knows, no professional, no matter what they have in degrees, and will understand your loved one as much as you do, and try and factor in those sleep periods in a way that supports you. And during those sleep periods that you're engaging in, okay, I understand there's the practical day-to-day tasks of the house, but it also there needs to be some self-care in there as well. Now, that could be the moment for the walk and talk with your friend, the coffee, not endless social media or mindless scrolling, but getting out in nature, having some tasks that are good for you, using that mindfulness, using the visualization, using the progressive muscular relaxation, getting active with your self-care, not passive. Another feature underneath that iceberg is the whole area of motivation. It's almost like the balloon is being deflated. There's just no motivation, no get up and go. I understand it can be very difficult, because as the carer, you feel like you have to fire up everything in the house. You have to fire up your kids, they get them going to school, the challenges of day to day. You have to fire up your loved one. The burden of caring fundamentally is around trying to energize everybody to get on with the tasks of the day. Just sometimes you don't have that energy yourself. It's a real struggle. So how can you support that motivation? How can you enhance that a little bit? So maybe if you rate that motivation, write it down. Where's your motivation today? How are you around getting dressed? How are you about going out for a walk? How are you for staying alone in a certain part of the day? How are you for whatever it is that connecting with somebody? How are you for this task? And maybe, because this is the whole area, promoting that independence. They're linked really. Like the more you do and the more you care and the more over caring you do, you will actually deflate that motivation as well. Whereas if you're asking the person, like, this is the task I want you to do, it doesn't have to be the first thing in the morning, it can be done at some stage throughout the day, and giving that person, now that becomes a win and an achievement for that person. So they don't necessarily have to get up and get dressed straight away, because that might be just too much of a burden with chronic fatigue. But yet you want, what is the expectation? What is it you want? What can the person do in the context of their brain injury? You might have to shift your expectation. They might have to really shift what they want to do in terms of that you can hit some form of happy medium. So it's quite challenging motivation. And maybe then that's where the individual with the brain injury, for themselves to get some support around the impact of the injury, maybe through professional supports, through talking with their RA, having open communication about motivation and what is it. Sometimes when it comes to motivation and chronic fatigue, it's around goal setting and pacing. pacing is critically important. And here's the thing about pacing and goal setting. If the person is very energized one day and there's a huge amount, and then they're wrecked the following day, this is often the case, we'd often see this, they actually have a decline in their achievements because they overdo it, they're wrecked the following day. They overdo it during times of lots of energy or enough energy, they overdo it. The task is to actually step by step, goal setting. And when you goal set and you go up, your energy levels go up and it can be sustained longer. When at times of high energy, if you overdo it, it will actually just lead to a declining amount of goals achieved. So pacing and goal setting, that's the key for motivation and chronic fatigue.